it can't just be Colin Kaepernick, or it can't just be, the marquee leadership black athletes doing this. This is where we need more people doing it. We need white people doing it too. We need people to embrace this idea, because ultimately, that's where change starts, when people are coming together to do these things, when it's not just pointing a finger and saying, hey, these guys are doing that and I agree with that, but I'm scared to do it.
This is TSN In Depth. I'm Rick Westhead, joined today by JT Brown, Matt Dumba, Blake Wheeler, and Kurtis Gabriel, and we're talking about racial intolerance. Very timely subject. JT, how close are you to Minneapolis, and can you just paint a picture of what it feels and looks like there and what people are talking about?
So I'm probably 30 minutes from Minneapolis and maybe 15 from St. Paul. I was able to go down to Minneapolis yesterday and the capital. As of yesterday, there was a lot of good. I think in my tweet/Instagram, you'd be able to see a lot of positive things going on down there. A lot of the community coming together.
Matt, you grew up in Canada. Do you mind sharing your first story when you remember as a person of color being the target of racial intolerance or racism?
Unfortunately, I think that started pretty early. Hopefully it was kind of a tribute to my skill and how good of a hockey player I was at the time. But little kids, they try to break you down. And I think my first experiences of racism were, kids didn't know what I was, so they kind of tried to throw the book at me, kind of just hitting all the races, seeing what would stick. And I can remember times just leaving the rink, and I'd come off the ice and I'd be pretty worked up. I'd be sad. My mom would be irate. She'd be yelling. Sometimes we'd leave the rink, crying. Kind of having my dad just kind of protect us all and kind of usher us out of the rink.
JT, do you mind sharing your memories growing up and when you first remember being targeted because of how you look?
Yeah, I'd agree with Dumba on the fact that it started earlier than, you'd really like it to happen. But, I think it's more just as kids, you'd be lining up, people would say things. I was very fortunate to have a team and friends and coaching staff that really supported me from day one. So, a lot of these instances where it did happen, I remember a time where we just got off the ice as a team when I was called the N-word in a game. We lost the game, we forfeited the game. But, my coaches and my teammates were all fine with that. They were able to show me at an early age that I did have allies and I had people that were having my back.
Kurtis, what do you think of? Where does your mind go when you hear stories, like JT and Matt are sharing?
I haven't. I kind of feel weird doing some of this stuff because I've been in such a sheltered environment. Honestly, I think I was raised in a household where it literally didn't matter and I didn't see color or race or anything. My mom did an incredible job where I played with African American players growing up, played with Asian guys, played with everybody. Owen Sound Attack is my OHL team. We've always had a long history of a lot of good black hockey players, and it never was a problem. So for me, it's just basically on this issue, I'm new to this issue a little bit, but it's been building within my life for a long time. And I actually didn't know till too long ago that I have some lineage down there in the Caribbean with my dad's side of the family who I lost early on. I didn't really know a lot about. So for me, I'm just getting sick and tired of just seeing all this stuff. So I'm standing up for the LGBTQ 2S plus community, and it just extends. I never thought I was just only that community, but to me, I'm just fed up with all this stuff because I don't see it. So I'm tired of living in my sheltered little bubble. I need to get out there and see what's actually going on and try to help in any way I can.
Blake, how about you? Growing up in Minnesota, do you remember your family having conversations with you and talking about racial intolerance or racism?
The athletes that we cheered for, the music my dad listened to, we were surrounded by, that environment, African Americans in our house, just with that. And I know that sounds pretty ignorant because, in my tweet the other day, I said, I grew up predominantly with people that look like me. The stories these guys are sharing right now about some of their experiences in youth hockey, I literally had, one one black player pretty much on all the teams that I had growing up, hockey, baseball, football. I mean, he was one of the best athletes that we had in our community, went on to have a, great college football and NFL career. And, some of the things that happened to him, I remember from an early age, it was heartbreaking, really. I mean, truly, you didn't understand where he, what he was going through, but seeing him go through it, seeing the tears, seeing how hard it hit him to have these things happen to him. Those are my earliest memories of feeling, angry.
Yeah. JT, when you were growing up, was your family worried about your interactions with police? Did they have the kind of conversations with you that, white teenagers wouldn't be having with their parents?
This is something that's more common, I would say, in minority communities, of having these sort of conversations. I definitely was having these conversations with my parents about, how to interact, telling me that I might not be given the benefit of the doubt in the situation. These conversations do happen, and I think it is happening in our communities, but it should happen more in other communities so that they know as well what's going on.
Do you have any of your personal experiences that you can share about interactions with police that left you feeling very nervous, afraid, however?
I mean, for me, I keep my insurance in my little, like where your garage door opener. So I don't have to reach for anything. It's right in front of them. Everything that I need is right there. So that's just like a little instance that some people may not have to do, but I want to make sure that I limit any suggestion that I might be going to do something, or I might be reaching for something, so just situations like that is I'm trying to do the best I can to, make sure that I'm safe.
Matt, how familiar does that sound to you?
I think one thing that stuck with me the most was just throughout this whole thing with the riots and protests down in Minneapolis. I remember talking to my mom 2 or 3 days ago. At the end of the conversation, she's like, "Oh, if you have to go back to Minneapolis this season, potentially this summer," she said, "Yeah, you got to be careful. Make sure she's like you're driving the speed limit. Make sure you're just acting accordingly." And after, I didn't really realize, but just how much it stuck with me. And my mom, she shouldn't have to be worried about me like that. To go down to where I work, and kind of deal with any of that. That shouldn't even be a conversation.
Matt, just hearing your story, I think that there's a lot of people in Canada that would say that this is an American problem. In Canada, we're far more multicultural and diverse. Based on your experiences, what would you say to people who make that case?
I think that's a little ignorant as well. There's tons of Black people here in Canada, in Calgary, throughout the whole country, and a bunch of different races. Like you did say, it as somewhat cultural mosaic. My family personally, my mom was adopted into a family that was made up of all different types of races: Black, Asian, and First Nations. So I've seen racism on all the spectrums of all the races in Canada, and maybe it's not as much directed at Black people in Canada as it is First Nations, but there's definitely a problem, and that's why we all need to unite and come together.
I'm curious about hockey culture. Blake, what's your perspective? How often do players actually have real conversations about things like this in an NHL locker room?
I don't think it's a lot, honestly. Where I grew up, a lot of our locker rooms kind of look the same. I've played with a handful of Black players, obviously Buff, Evander Kane, Johnny Oduya. Like I said, I mean, those guys were a part of our team. They were a part of our family. It wasn't, we didn't identify them as Black players. They were just them to us. Am I going to say this never, ever happens? Clearly, I'm in no position to say that. But from my experiences, I felt like I've been on teams that have promoted a culture of, accepting guys for who they were, where they come from, their differences, and I hope that's the truth. Like I said, that's coming from me. I hope those guys feel the same way. I can't speak for them, but that's how I've seen it so far.
You talked, Kurtis, about having your eyes open to this as an issue. When was it that your eyes were opened?
There really wasn't for me one video, but it wasn't even from recently. It was from a woman 4 years ago in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that just was losing it to, I assume it was someone in police force or maybe the property that they were on, but she was standing peacefully on her side of the grass. She was verbally saying, I don't want to be peaceful, but I am going to be peaceful.
I'm tired of being peaceful. I have lost 3 brothers to this, sir. 3! This is not all right. I'm hurt. You don't see my eyes. I'm hurt. My people out here hurt.
The passion that came from her, it made me like break down, honestly. Like I didn't, and then I just went on a Twitter rant, and then since then I've just been like, hey, I want to help out with this now, because if I was in that situation, like I can't speak to JT and Dums here, but I would be livid. Like I'm a passionate person. I would be losing my mind. It's called empathy. You put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and I put myself in her shoes, and her I think it was her husband or somebody's holding her back, and she's saying she's lost 3 brothers to this, and it just hit me like, this is crazy. If this has happened to me, I'd be at the front of everything. So why not put myself there as a white man? Because we need more people doing that. You got Tom Brady signing on that petition for Ahmaud Arbery. That's a massive statement. We got Wheels here. He's a captain of a Canadian club. Like we need more of that.
JT, soccer players in Germany in the last couple of days have been kneeling during games, using armbands, has slogans on their shirts to send messages about the murder of George Floyd. What kind of space is there in the National Hockey League for these messages to be sent? And I'm remembering your move in 2017 to raise your fist on the bench before a game.
As far as wearing an armband or obviously like lifting up the jersey and having a shirt and it was things written on the shirt, I mean, there's not a lot of room for that. I mean, just based on the sport we play, how protected and covered we are. I would say, and overall, there's just not a lot of room for it. But I will say, I mean, I think the NHL statement was a very good statement. And I also think that if you look back from 3, 5, you can go back as long as we want to. I don't think there's been this many athletes, especially in the NHL, going to Twitter, using their platform to raise awareness and to say that enough is enough. And I know that there wasn't that, 3 years ago, there wasn't it 5, but going forward, that's what we need. And I think it's commendable to everybody who's stood up, used their platform. Obviously it's something that takes a lot of courage to do. And myself, I want to make sure everybody knows that I appreciate that.
Well, people don't know this, the whole story of what JT went through because of that as well. And just knowing him and being good friends with him, I get passionate. My hair is standing up right now because was it right for JT and his family to get death threats, threaten their lives, his kids' lives? Like, that's such bullshit. People come to the game to watch us, and your identity and yourself is displayed in front of thousands and millions of people because of your own creativity, your identity. So all of that comes together. And so if one man like G wants to make that stand, that's who he is, and that was accepted by his team, as accepted by the people in that organization. So you gotta be there. You're watching that. That's why you come to the game.
Blake, what do you think when you hear that? You're a team captain. I mean, should it only be 1 or 2 players raising their fist, or is there room for an entire team to show their support like that?
This country was founded on those principles, right? Like being American. The thing we take maybe the most pride in is that we get the freedom to express ourselves. While, everyone on this panel may not agree on every single thing, I can respect everyone's ability to think differently than I do. And I think that's actually a great thing. Like, I want to learn that. I want to learn why you think that way. Maybe I'll learn something new. Maybe I'll agree. Maybe I won't. It can't just be Colin Kaepernick, or it can't just be, the marquee leadership Black athletes doing this. This is where we need more people doing it. We need white people doing it too. We need people to embrace this idea, because ultimately, that's where change starts, when people are coming together to do these things, when it's not just pointing a finger and saying, hey, these guys are doing that and I agree with that, but I'm scared to do it. So I think we're finally getting to that point where, if people feel strongly enough about it and over half a team's doing it, I mean, who is that hurting? What wrong is that doing?
If I might say something on that too, I would say that when we're talking about these issues too, and when people get upset, I think you got to remember, like, change isn't supposed to be comfortable. That's not the point. If it was supposed to be comfortable, we'd be staying and doing the exact same thing that has been going on. When people want change, it's going against something. And that's what makes things so uncomfortable. And I think that's when it gets upset and things need to be brought up and it might not be the right time. Well, it's supposed to be uncomfortable, and we're trying to make sure it's known now. And that's how the change moves forward, I think.
What is it about hockey culture too that discourages, or at least seems to discourage, some of the sport's biggest stars, biggest personalities from weighing in on this?
I just think it's nobody's bigger than the team. Nobody's allowed to be bigger than the team. We're all just good old boys trying to win something. And that's great. That's great. We can all work towards something. But at the same time, like, you're not even about this. You want the sport to grow. Guys, like Dum said, you got to be able to show what makes you. What makes a team great is individuals. Teams win together, but great individuals make a great team. So why can't we express who we are? And of course, sometimes it might step over the line a little bit, but why can't we just show? And it's that mentality. The GM, it comes down from the owner, GM. Everybody's got to do their job, do their role. Shut up. You're here to play hockey. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. Like, we're people too. Like, that's what people come to the games to watch the game. Yeah, but they also love hearing what makes guys them, and that's what ties people to the game more. Once you know someone's story, you're going to watch that person and be like, wow, I can see his struggle, and he's trying to get better at this, and he's fighting for this movement. I believe in that. Why can't we do that? Like, other sports are marketing the crap out of it. Basketball, guys have their own giant brands, and I get it's a different sport, but why can't hockey be a little bit more like that? It doesn't have to be everybody just fall in line.
I think that's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I don't think that our league is there yet where we're on the same level with accepting that part of pro sports, because you look at franchise values, you look at, from an ownership standpoint, from the league standpoint, that's who they're defending. Gary Bettman's job is to work for the owners. His job's not to promote these players that we're talking about. In basketball, you don't cheer for the Cleveland Cavaliers, you cheer for the team that LeBron James plays for, right? I mean, fans literally follow him from team to team. The NFL is the same way. And now, how many Tampa Bay Buccaneers jerseys are getting sold? Tom Brady moves to Tampa. So it's not set up that way in hockey. It's just not the way it is. It's like Kurtis was saying, and I think it's part of the fundamental part of our game is it to win in hockey, you need a good team. You can't just have the best player and have a good team. So I think ultimately we're raised in that environment that, hey, I could be the best player on my team, but our team could be no good, and it doesn't matter.
Well, and let's be honest, when a guy does show personality, somebody like PK Subban, the whispers start pretty soon about making a case that he's not a team player. Isn't that fair?
I think it depends, and I've never been on a team with PK. I've played against him. I know that as a guy that has played against PK and played against him in some pretty hostile situations, think of our series against Nashville a few years ago. He's a guy that drives you nuts because, he celebrates from, the top of the circle to the far blue line scoring a goal, but it's not so much about the celebration. It's that, you just gave up a goal, and that burns you. And then to see him celebrating, that burns you even more. So from my standpoint, I always loved what he was doing. Some of the things that he does, you laugh at because he's actually really funny and he's got a great personality. But and this might be newer in the last handful of years, but I've more started to embrace these types of things in our game because there isn't any of it, and to build our game, to get over that hump, like we need more guys like PK.
JT and Matt, I'd like you to respond to this. I was asking Evander Kane yesterday about where the NHL is in terms of efforts to have a voice on social injustices. And he made a really good observation. In 2014, Eric Garner died when he was put in a chokehold by a police officer. And the NBA made up shirts that said, "I can't breathe," for all the players. And it became something that the league encouraged the players to invest in and to a message for them to amplify. Hockey is for everyone. Is that enough?
Like, hockey's for everyone's great. I've worked with them. I love what they do. And I love the message about inclusion and equality. And I think the NHL can do more, though. Like, as far as the grassroots, that's awesome. And it's great about trying to grow the game and get more minorities in the game. But I think, as I said, like, the NHL's recent statement was great. And I think they can do more of that. I think they can do more, I guess, socially. Whereas right now there's a big focus on growing and making the game more diverse and inclusive. But I also think there is more that we can do to stand up against issues like this.
We can all look at ourselves. We all have done this after hockey game. I sure hope you have, because if you haven't, you're not a good teammate. And you realize, what can I do? We can all speak up. It's a tweet. Some of the top guys don't want to get too involved. It's a tweet. It's just a little something to show that we're a united front. And there's a lot more good people than bad people. And these bad people aren't even bad people. They're just not educated, and they haven't been brought up. And I feel bad for them, and we have to have compassion for them.
Again, coming back to what I was just pointing out with the I Can't Breathe and the NBA's investment in that and promotion and advocacy for that. Blake and Matt, can you imagine a day, hopefully in the not too distant future, where all NHL teams are coming out in practice jerseys that say "I Can't Breathe" or "Black Lives Matter"? And why hasn't it happened before now?
Yeah, I think it should. And I think it's super cool that Blake's on here with us as a leader throughout Canada, the US. There's hundreds of little kids, Black, First Nations, all different races that are fans of this guy. And, to see someone, it's one thing to see someone who looks like you and is trying to fight for your rights and fight for the equality rights that we've been talking about. It's another thing to see someone of different color coming together and supporting that cause, pushing that forward. And I think it's just cool to have Kurtis and Blake on here right now and see more guys step up.
Blake, what do you think as a team captain? You guys are all handed jerseys to wear for your pregame that say "Black Lives Matter" or "I Can't Breathe." Is anybody saying, "I don't want to wear this"?
I can't say we as a hockey community haven't been there yet, because I wasn't there yet. I mean, I've felt this way for a while, and even watching Minneapolis burn all last week, like, I'm sitting at my phone wanting to say something and not knowing how to, or if I should, or what really to do. And then finally my wife and I are talking, and it's like, you know what, if you say nothing, that's just as bad.
This is new territory for a lot of dudes, and guys you shouldn't feel like you're going to be crucified for one time putting your foot in your mouth or saying the wrong thing, because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to talk to, even, right now, you're kind of nervous or not, you don't want to say the wrong thing. So I think we gotta get away from that if we do want to really promote change, and people just need to speak your opinion and get it out there and have more conversations like this.
JT, you've got 2 kids. You were mentioning to a colleague of mine that at the ages of 1 and 2, that they were the targets of racism. What happened?
I mean, it's just a lot of it's social media. You look at, we post pictures of our kids all the time, whether it's on my wife's Instagram or myself. But, you just see, a 1 and a 2-year-old being called the N-word on social media. And like, I just don't understand. Like you said, like, how can you hate somebody? And especially at 1 and 2, they're the most innocent age. Like, the worst thing they've done is spilt their milk on the counter, like, and it's gone down onto the carpet. Like, they've done nothing to anybody, but you still see this hatred. And yes, it's social media, and whether they had a real profile picture or not, but like that's still how some people feel and how some people have that ingrained into their mind of hate.
Blake, you've got kids as well. As your kids get older, what kind of conversations do you expect you're going to have with them about race?
We talk about empathy, trying to put myself in that situation, trying to put my kids in that situation. And I can't, I can't imagine my kids being subjected to that. My parents I grew up 20 minutes from, where this is happening in Minneapolis. My parents, my wife's parents still live 25 minutes from there. So I've been obviously talking to my parents a lot about this the last couple of days. My dad was texting me last night, and basically his message was, hopefully your generation gets it right. My generation didn't. He grew up in Detroit. He's like, I remember the race riots in the late 60s in Detroit, and this is happening all over again. So we didn't get it right. So hopefully your generation is able to get it right. And basically we're trying to show them, we're watching what's happening in Minneapolis. And my oldest son Louis, he's old enough now to ask questions. He's 7, and you get through a different perspective when you're hearing a 7-year-old ask you these questions and telling you how bad that is. Like, why won't he get off his neck? Why won't he get off his neck? And to have to try to explain to him that yes, cops are good and cops are trying to protect us and cops are trying to do the right thing, but not all of them are.
What has to happen for things to really change?
If you look at the track record of these instances that happen, that is why people are, I can't speak for everybody, but that's why I think a lot of people are so upset, is because we all know there's a good possibility, or the track record of these situations, justice is not served, or at least in our justice will not be served. And I think that's what kind of gets lost. It's the track record of this happening, like we said, over and over and over, but nothing is being done. So I think that is a first step to being, having things change and move into the right direction.
Blake and Kurtis, as white professional athletes, what are each of you prepared to do?
Kind of the first tweet that I saw that was really stuck with me was from Joe Burrow. And, basically his message was, this isn't political, like these are human rights. So this isn't politics. Like, I saw the video of Killer Mike down in Atlanta. I don't know if you guys saw that video.
If you sit in your homes tonight, instead of burning your home to the ground, you will have time to properly plot, plan, strategize, and organize and mobilize in an effective way. And 2 of the most effective ways is first taking your butt to the computer and making sure you fill out your census so that people know who you are and where you are. The next thing is making sure you exercise your political bully power and going to local elections and beating up the politicians that you don't like. You got a prosecutor sent your partner to jail and you know it was bullshit, put a new prosecutor in there. Now's your election to do it.
That was, I think, what I needed to see, because that was my question too. Like, now what are we going to do? This is great that all of this is happening, that we're able to put this on a platform that we can talk about it, but now, what's next? And, to that point, I think that you need to educate yourself on who you're voting for. Like, people need to vote, and people need to be educated on who they're voting for.
Matt, imagine for a minute that you're sitting across the table from Gary Bettman, and he says to you, where are we falling short in terms of making hockey more inclusive? How can we do better? What do you say?
It's having that understanding, having that empathy, and being able to allow your players, allow, higher up guys in the NHL, people come out, hopefully GMs or owners, and embrace their players of all nationalities.
This isn't a political thing. It's a human rights thing. So everybody should be on board with this. If you're a human and you consider yourself a human, you need to be on board with this. So what's wrong with throwing, I'm worried that my endorsement deal, who's going to look bad on you for saying you're behind humanity? Who's going to look bad on you for saying that? So why do you have to be silent? Why does everybody have to be silent? Why are we the only
hockey culture's been around for a long time, right?
I know. Well, it's like, where I thought hockey culture is where, like, we're supposedly the nicest guys in sports. That's what we hear all the time. Hockey players are the best. Well, it's time to be the best. Let's lead.